She'll moderate this panel for us this afternoon.
Hello, and thank you guys again for having us here today. Courtney Jensen with the North Dakota Department of Commerce. I recently had the pleasure of moving into the UAS and aerospace area in industry in the state, and it's been a really easy transition for me despite having not a lot of industry understanding prior to the move. I've been able to step into some incredible things that are already going on in the state and be supported by some of the most amazing minds that I've met in this space coming in. Having lived in multiple different states, I've been very, very impressed with the intelligence and the dedication of the team of people who is working on this. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the industry, UAS, UAV, autonomous systems, you'll hear this referred to in a multitude of different ways. And I will let the experts here give us a little bit more context in a second for this. But what we're talking about is unmanned, in this case, aerial systems. We're talking about what you guys are thinking of as drones and about the development of that industry. But as I've walked into this industry, I found out it's a lot more than the drone that my 15-year-old son flies to annoy me at all times of the day. But it's a lot more complicated than that. We're talking about huge aerial assets. We're talking about military grade. We're talking about search and rescue missions. We are talking about looking at our pipelines and making sure they're safe. We're talking about surveying land. We're talking about flood patterns. We're talking about all kinds of things. We're talking about delivery options. And North Dakota is a state that is absolutely at the forefront of that conversation because of the work of the people that are on the stage with me and many more. A lot of that work has started with the test site, the UAS test site that's up in Grand Forks that has been given federal aviation permission to test these systems because these systems can't be used nationwide because of airspace issues. We have a whole lot that we've had to work on and develop, and North Dakota's been a leader, being one of those 7 test sites in the United States. What we're talking about today is the expansion of the work that the test site has done to bring the entire state into this. Vantis, a statewide network that has all the infrastructure, the sensors, everything we need to operate these systems safely, effectively, and according to what the FAA is going to need from us to make sure that these can be operated safely. And so I am joined today by Nick Flom, who is the Northern Plains UAS Test Site Executive Director, by James Seaplack, who is the Program Manager for Vantis, and Kenley Nebeker, who is the Train ND Executive Director. And we're going to talk a little bit about what Vantis is, what it means for what expanding it to Williston means for each of you in the room and for the industry, and what the workforce and training is going to look like alongside that. So I think the first thing we'll do is we'll start off with a video that has been created by Vantis to explain what the Vantis network is.
As Americans, we've come a long way, but one thing never changes. To get where we're going, we need a path forward. We can follow one, or we can build one. With Vantis, we're building one. In the sky. Vantis is North Dakota's statewide UAS network. It's still in the works, but when complete, it will enable UAS flights beyond visual line of sight across the entire state.
The part that makes Vantis unique over any other type of network is that it's a single package that brings together all of the elements that are required to fly beyond visual line of sight. It incorporates the remote surveillance component of radars. It brings in the command and control that's required. It's all connected through a backhaul network that feeds into a mission network operations center. These are all components that are required to fly beyond visual line of sight, and you get it all with Vantis. UAS can be flown around town, across the state, and even eventually across the country without interruptions in service. This enables operations like package delivery, utility inspections, search and rescue missions, agricultural, medical test deliveries, things that have not even become a reality because Vantis is the first of its kind.
This is going to bring in companies to North Dakota. This is a high-tech emerging industry. National companies doing aviation systems will be coming here to test, validate, implement their systems. The operators flying the aircraft and the end users like the electric utility industry, the railroads, the oil and gas industry, will be now improving their operations and doing that here in North Dakota because we're enabled unmanned aircraft with Ventus.
Vantis is really created to support the commercial industry. It's a single network that multiple users will be able to take advantage of.
Imagine if you had to build your own road to get anywhere. Imagine if the fire department, the postal service, the trucking companies, everyone had to build their own roads. That makes no earthly sense. We don't think it makes sense in the sky either.
We are starting, our initial key site is in the western part of the state where we have direct needs and benefits now. Proven there, we'll expand to the eastern part of the state and then eventually commit the entire state together.
Our industry partners, the commercial operators, they want to have this network be deployed all over the country. And we're taking that into consideration. We're working with our federal partners like the FAA in order to make sure that what we're deploying is meeting industry standards and is something that's going to be scalable beyond the borders of North Dakota.
This is where we want to go in the state of North Dakota. This is where the FAA wants to go too, and we're doing that in partnership. These are the giants in manned aviation infrastructure. They have now partnered with the state of North Dakota to take that technology expertise from the manned aviation world and help build the unmanned Vantis infrastructure here in North Dakota. Vantis is the future for UAS.
Welcome to the high road. Welcome to Vantis.
Well, luckily the voiceover on that was so good we didn't even need the pictures at the end, right? He had a great voice. So I want to stop and take one moment to clarify for those in the room who might not be very familiar with the UAS industry. When we're talking about beyond visual line of sight, Nick, can you take a moment and explain just briefly what that means?
Yeah, no problem. Again, thanks for having me. So, you sometimes in everyone's industry, you have this nomenclature that makes complete sense to you, and you just assume that it makes sense to them. But I need to probably do this explanation of what beyond visual line of sight is. I could use the word daily, and it means something to me. So if you think about, we have an unmanned aircraft. You have something that's flying around in the sky that has nobody on board. Yet there's a requirement to make sure that you don't run into other airplanes that are out there flying. If I'm flying around as a manned pilot, I get to look out the windshield, and if I see another airplane, no different than if you're in your car, you move out of the way. So we have to have that same type of responsibility with a UAS. We still have to be able to see other aircraft that are out there flying, and we have to be able to avoid them. That's challenging when you don't have a set of eyes looking outside the windshield. So instead of traditionally looking with your eyes, you need to find another way, and that's technology, and that's really what the basis of a lot of this is putting in the required infrastructure and requirements to be able to see others that are out there so that you can avoid them, which allows us to all fly around safely.
And so what we're looking at is the state of North Dakota is the first state, or is in plan to be the first state to have a complete border-to-border system in which these could fly beyond the visual line of sight, which means the cost for doing these flights, the efficacy, the investment of the flights it's all going to mean the costs are going to go down, the investment amounts are going to increase. And so North Dakota, if we can do this and pull this together, will be the first. It's a very exciting thing, and Nick and his team are leading moving this forward. Some of that infrastructure has been built in the state for the test site, which is up in the Grand Forks area. There's a corridor already built, and that is now expanding. So as we expand this, Nick and then James, what kind of an impact does Vantis have for Western North Dakota and specifically for Williston?
So this initiative, it's funded by our state legislators. Again, thank you, those in the crowd that have supported this. It's a vision that came from the governor. It has to be supported from legislators, and we just have the privilege of executing on that. And you look at how can drones be used? What kind of good can they provide? And we look at it from a state standpoint of how can we make our state better? Can that be done through maybe some of our state agencies being able to use drones for an efficient manner. From a public safety, how can we use Drone May from a search and rescue standpoint? And then from a commercialization, how can we use it? And really, as we're thinking about, where do we start this within the state? I'll say Williams County made a ton of sense to us. And the reason behind it, there are multiple use cases that this area provides that are greatly beneficial. Obviously, the oil and gas industry, a plethora of different types of opportunities that they could use for flying drones long ranges, from inspections to safety. We have, being in also rural parts of the state, we look at, what does the future of medical delivery look like? We just over the last year figured out, how do I get one less person maybe to show up to a hospital that's not needed? What if I could provide services out to people? What does rural medicine look like? So you start to combine all of these things, and we need to start this in the western part of the state. We're going to learn a lot out here. We've had everything from Sean to the mayor. It's been open arms on let's figure this out together here. That cooperative nature has us kicking off the project and what we're calling our key site. Literally right here in the Williston area.
So what is the timeline for the development of Vantis in this area, James?
Yeah, thank you. We are well on our way. I'll say that. A lot of talk. Initial funding was 2019. We did testing on the east side of the state, but where we are implementing and what we're calling key site initial operations is right here. So you go out to Williston Airport right now, you will see a new radar system. You do have the weather radar. In addition now, there's a radar that's going to be used by Vantis to look at where manned aircraft are flying and help the unmanned aircraft. And it's somewhat of a misnomer. There are people flying these aircraft, they just happen to be on the ground, not on the aircraft. So the pilot on the ground will be able to see the other manned aircraft and fly beyond line of sight of the pilot on the ground, but be able to detect and avoid and see the other aircraft around. So again, infrastructure is being installed right now, both at the Williston Airport, at the state DOT tower just to the southeast of here, so reuse of those state resources, Watford City Airport, and actually some cell phone towers down in that area too. So we're well in the middle of it. We will be starting actually flight test operations here in about 2 weeks. And we will be flying that throughout the summer, heavily coordinated with the Federal Aviation Administration. So I'm sure Anthony is in here somewhere. And don't worry, Anthony, we're not going to bring in too many FAA people, but there will be FAA people that will be coming in here. And if there's any manned aircraft pilots out there also, don't worry, we'll control the FAA people. But so it's real, it's starting, we're digging holes, installing things. The Network Operations Center for this, you have to have all the systems that feed into and monitoring of the systems, make sure they're all up and going. That is established now at Grand Sky, which is the civilian side of Grand Forks Air Force Base. So everything we're doing out here is already tied across the state to there. But again, proving things here, we need that key site, real world operations, proper testing, FAA approvals, and then we'll start expanding from here, getting into next year. So.
Thank you. It's not just the attention of the FAA that we're getting on the national stage. We're getting companies calling us all the time saying, if you are the first to set this up, we want to come and test our operations there. So we're getting a lot of interest in what's happening in North Dakota nationally and also internationally. I had a call just a couple of days ago with Finland about what we're doing for border security and how we're going to solve that problem. Finland's right on the border with Russia. They're very interested in what's happening in North Dakota. And as we attract this attention and these potentials for growth in our current industry and new industry moving to the state, what do you see the workforce need being for Vantis and for the industry that comes in?
Yes, I'll take that one. I'm the workforce guy. Definitely there's going to be a massive workforce need, and that's what moved us, Train ND in particular, and Wilson State College, into being interested in this pathway and in partnering with Vantis and the test site. We ultimately, if we just take a guess at numbers here, and let's say there's 3,000 birds on the network at its maturity, an estimate of about 3 to 4 people per bird required to be trained in some fashion in order for that bird to be up there. We're looking at anywhere from 9,000 to 12,000 people needing to be trained. That's a massive amount of people that need to get the proper training and the proper information into their hands to be able to make this work. And so really what we identified early this year was a workforce training need that's pending. I mean, it's going to be here. It's a matter of us getting ahead of it. This is one of the first times since I've been here in North Dakota that I feel like we get to be proactive in meeting that workforce need rather than reactive and trying to catch up. We've gotten great support from the legislature this biennium. Once again, a huge thanks to Senator Beckedahl in particular for fighting for this area and really seeing the vision that this will help people who have been displaced from their current or from their previous jobs, helping us retrain those people and move them into a high-skilled, high-need area that's on the verge of technology. So a huge workforce need coming.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I like what you said about being proactive instead of reactive, and the recognition of the growth and the way that permeates all of the industries in the state, because as a UAS industry, it's an interesting space because it's not one industry. It's an augmentation of all of the industries. And so I know that around the country, there's a lot of big companies that have started to employ their own pilots to do this work. So they're staff members of individual businesses, and then of course there's service companies that exist as well. I'm gonna ask Nick this question, but any of the others of you can jump in on this as well. But Nick, where are the different pieces in the workforce that we're talking about here? Of course, it's easy to talk about pilots and pilot training, but as this grows, what are the other needs we're going to see? Yeah,
the pilot side's a fun one to figure out, because this is the advancement of the technology. That's a tough one. Right now when you fly a drone, it's probably one guy flying one drone. When you get to scale, we're actually going to maybe even decrease the pilot workforce, because one guy maybe can control 10 at a time, which is a very different way of thinking than we do right now. But then there's a pilot side that absolutely has to be figured out as we scale this up. But then there's someone who's maintaining it from a maintenance standpoint. He's required. We have why is this airplane or drone flying in the first place? A lot of times it's being done for an inspection. That could be a linear inspection over a transmission or rail line. That could be looking at a pipeline. So that there's a data collection standpoint. How do I get actionable data back to the company? If that could be anything from an oil and gas company to agricultural. That's a really big workforce need as well, is from the data processing side of things. We've looked at logistics. If it's moving of packages, and I'm not necessarily talking getting Starbucks to your house faster or something along those lines. It's cool, but there's going to be other components as well on the logistical chain. We've already seen decreases in retail. Losing. If retail loses 100,000 jobs, logistics gains 400,000 jobs. So there's a workforce requirement just to meet those logistics needs from a delivery drone type of service. So it becomes really, and then there's somebody who's selling the product, there's somebody who's managing the product, and the next thing you use this like simple metric of one drone, how many people, and it's not just a pilot, it's everybody who's supporting that entire supply chain along the lines.
And as we talk about this, it sounds like there's going to be some unpredictable need also as we grow this industry. It's a new industry, right? It's new tech. The tech changes quickly, and it changes in a way that is going to require probably ongoing training. So, Kenley, can you talk a little bit about how you guys are designing the training program through TrainND and kind of what your plan is to help meet that need?
Absolutely, glad to. I love what you stated as far as that it touches multiple industries. Our approach to the design of this curriculum, number one is, or training for the workforce, is to number one have two different paths. We'll have a pathway for beyond line of sight and still a pathway for visual line of sight. So we're training people up in both those need areas, which will continue forward in the state. So we have that two-branch pathway that way. Next, from there, within the beyond line of sight, we will not just focus on the pilot area, but on all of the necessary ancillary pieces of it. As far as we're even looking at A&P mechanics. Okay, so if we start talking about these birds, they're going to need an A&P mechanic to actually work on them. There is no training facility this side of far away of part of Minnesota to be able to provide that. So we're looking at providing that type of training for people, new jobs created there. The data analytics, the data collection aspect of it, being able to move that data, just like Nick said, nobody flies it for fun except for maybe me, it seems. Being able to get that data into people's hands and make it manageable for them to be able to read, that's going to be a huge part of what we do from a training aspect. And we're really looking at partnering with UND in that aspect and being able to provide some very high quality stuff that way. And there's a natural partnership there. Being able to move into industry-specific training is the other key. That when we started thinking about this program at TrainND, we wanted it to have an industry-specific aspect. So training specifically for oil and gas use case scenarios that gets people confident in how they can use it within oil and gas, see the possibilities, and know that they know how to do it. Into the renewable energy sector, into the railroad sector, into ag, which is a huge thing. As a former son of a farmer or a potato farmer in Idaho, ag there's massive application that really speaks to me there. So there's lots of industry-specific use case scenarios that we are already building the curriculum for, and we'll have ready to go very, very soon. And just as you stated, there needs to be flexibility as well. Right, and so it's not just there. That's what I love about the UAS industry, is the potential that's there. I mean, it's unlimited, and so it's really exciting to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential, and they're good jobs, they're good careers. With that, I want to ask, James, you work with pilots a lot, all of you do. What's the training time frame right now in a career in UAS? So let's say we are talking to one of the companies who's here in the room and is saying, well, we have some people on our staff already that we really value, but we really would like to move them forward, and we'd like to add the ability to do our own surveillance or to do our own data capture. What does it look like to get someone trained right now?
Okay, right now, if you're already a manned aircraft pilot, you can actually then get your unmanned aircraft certificate under Federal Aviation Regulations Part 107 fairly easily. It's actually, for initial flying, it literally just takes a weekend. Now for the advanced applications that we're talking and being able to fly, and again, the aircraft we're talking about are more towards what a manned aircraft level is. It's not what you would buy at Best Buy. It will be a type certified by the FAA, requires the maintenance and the pilot operations. And as well as to fly on Vantis, so we're supplying, I'm a state employee, we're putting in the infrastructure to, as I said in the video, the kind of the roadways in the sky. They'll also be training on that. How do you log into the network, use that surveillance data, use the command and control data. So that'll be some of this, also the specialty training Kenley's doing. So initial UAS flying, fairly easy to get the license. Getting the advanced training to fly a more advanced aircraft, as in manned aviation, that'll be longer period of time, I'll let you answer on how long your training courses are. But.
Yeah, no. So right now, the current curriculum build, and obviously there's still some decisions to be made by the FAA that may affect a little bit the length. But right now, we're looking at for basic beyond line of sight technical training being anywhere between 3 to 5 weeks. Obviously, that's 8 hours a day. That's an intense piece to it, but it's a pretty dang quick turnaround for us to be able to get somebody ready to go with basic. We start moving into industry-specific training after that. You're now going to add on like three weeks or so of specific training to ensure that we're hitting all the aspects of that. We're taking what's called a crawl, walk, run approach to training. So we get people very comfortable with the idea and with the skills necessary on a simulator first. And so we log a lot of simulation hours. Then we move into flying smaller UAS, getting them comfortable with that, low cost, low risk if there is a mishap. And then we move into, once their confidence is built, we start to run a little bit, and we move into some really big, cool stuff that we've got on the way. So that's the approach that we'll take. It's a stepwise approach, but we're looking at for beyond line of sight technical skills, 3 to 5 weeks, for the added industry-specific 3 weeks or so.
So we're looking at weeks, maybe months, not years of training. And to be clear, there is no requirement to have a pilot's license for a manned aircraft. That was a statement, I just want to be clear, made to say it's easy, really easy if you've already done it. But the point is these are good jobs, these are technical jobs, they're high-paying jobs, competitive jobs that are going to be really easy to train for. And North Dakota is not only putting the infrastructure in, we're putting the plan in for workforce to be able to do this because of the innovation of a lot of people right here in the state. It's very exciting also to look at what does the current national capacity for training pilots and workforce look like right now. I don't know who's the best of you to speak to this, probably Nick.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. You know, so it's we've looked at all sorts of different interesting numbers. You know, we've watched manned aviation, pilot shortages kind of come and go when it comes to the airlines. University of North Dakota, they produce, most of the pilots, a majority of them as, that go on to the airlines. The airlines just had a little bit of a lull last year, but they're already back to hiring. So, manned pilot needs always been kind of challenging, having shortages. On the unmanned side of things, we're coming up to like a huge challenge. When we're talking right now on unmanned aircraft, we talk in the, maybe across the country, the hundreds or thousands of drones that are maybe being operated in a state or a city at any given time. And those are manageable numbers of bringing on pilots in order to support that. Right now, North Dakota State, NDSCS down in Wahpeton, they have part of their surveying program. They have some pilots, and they're probably producing 15 guys a year, and a majority of that's going into the surveying side. Devil's Lake's doing some on the ag side, maybe same 10 guys. University of North Dakota has unmanned a UAS program at the UND side that's maybe getting about 200 guys a year. And that's kind of meeting some of those needs. There's a national level. Some of the other aeronautical universities across the country are probably similar type of numbers. Jim and I were actually, there was a panel yesterday. We were on a national UAS show that's not nearly as good as this because we were on a Zoom call giving a panel as opposed to in person. So I definitely appreciate the real people hospitality right now. But we're talking to one of the manufacturers, and we're not talking hundreds, we weren't talking thousands. I mean, they're looking at how do we scale this up like you scale up automobiles, which is hundreds of thousands to millions. And you go, wow, that's a substantial difference of onesies, twosies. We're talking about significant types of increases. So we are, by things that that Kenley's doing, again, being on that proactive, we see this coming. We absolutely see this tidal wave coming of opportunities and needs for the workforce, and how are we going to solve them? Because you're not going to solve them in some of your traditional ways. They have to be solved in accelerated types of fashions in order to accommodate, this tidal wave of opportunities that are coming. Of course, North Dakota, we have that foresight. We have a lot of the operations. Those numbers that Kenley was talking about, those are North Dakota numbers. That's not the rest of the country's type of numbers. And so we're gonna have to have resourceful and unique ways of bringing up a pilot workforce that you really hadn't done on the manned aviation side of things. It's something that you think about driver's ed. All of us went through driver's ed at one point to get millions of us on the road in order to drive. I went to driver's ed for like 2 weeks. Next thing you know, I'm driving a car for the rest of my life. How do we emulate that type of thing for getting pilots to fly drones at a very large scale?
And so when we talk about that, we talk about the numbers needed across the nation, not just the numbers needed in North Dakota. And we start having conversations about this, and I start getting phone calls from companies saying, when will your program be up, and when can we start sending people your direction? So the opportunity here is not just to train our own in-state, but to be able to bring people in from out of state for training as well, and to be a site to pull people in. And so when you're looking at your capacity as this program goes, have you guys thought through what that looks like to be kind of a magnet?
Absolutely. We've definitely thought through that aspect of it, and we've designed this in a very scalable way that we can scale down if we need to start off, if things don't start off the way that we expect them to, that we can scale up very quickly. And so we feel very confident in that. Some of the more theory-based aspect can be done via distance as well, which will make accessibility a great thing for people. And then when we move into the hands-on aspect of it, we feel like we do have the infrastructure here in the Williston area in particular, and in the state as a whole, for us to be able to scale up pretty quickly. And definitely we've thought about the national level, and that's one of the things that we really appreciate about just the recently passed $1 million grant to us from or funding to us from the legislature, is that it allows us to build a system to get the base of that system to allow us to start scaling up in that fashion.
Yeah, there's a lot of really incredible things that are going on around Vantis and around its the education for Vantis and the growth. So I kind of want to go down the line to each of you and ask the question, what about this moment in time have we not talked about where you see opportunity or excitement?
I guess I'm first in line, so I will start.
First in line, James.
And I'm going to actually switch this around a little bit. I've been talking a lot about pilot training and flying the aircraft and those type of things. I'm a pilot, manned aircraft pilot, and unmanned aircraft pilot, and that's exciting. But that's actually not the success for Vantis. Vantis is how, came in, I was sitting next to the Sanford Health folks down there. Success for Vantis is how to put in, actually, somewhat joke, but I was actually serious. They're going to put a helipad for a manned helicopter. I wanted a small helipad for an unmanned helicopter. So, how can we do medical delivery? We've been talking with McKenzie County Health, in Wofford City, and from one lab to another, transfer, medical delivery, those type of things. The dispatch center at it's going to be at the airport, the old airport. Do a drone as first responder. So some of the training now is getting the dispatchers to, when they get a 911 call, they can hit the button, have the drone take off to fly, and actually get there faster than the fire truck or the police car or something on the ground to give that eye in the sky. Now, how would the dispatcher, for better command and control, and also sending real-time video possibly to that fire truck and other things. So how is that going to be used? So the exciting part is not, even though it is exciting flying a drone, but it's the applications, the operations. How does it help you all out there in your industries, oil and gas, public works, the safety and all?
You know, I look back, so been with the test site since its inception, which was a little over 7 years ago, and you look at on how the technology and some of the use cases have changed and evolved. So some of the fun stuff is like not having any idea what the future holds, and you know, some of the things that are being worked on right now, you know, people transportation that's real. There's companies that are making huge investments in how do I take in the front end it'll have a pilot in it, but maybe at some point it doesn't. You know, you think about the Jetson standpoint. Uber has an initiative called Uber Elevate, which is, you know, moving people around in these types of vehicles for short distances. You know, what does short distance mean? You know, maybe 250 miles. You know, what does the drive from, you know, Williston to Bismarck look like as opposed to as a crow flies from, you know, Williston to Bismarck? You know, those are taking, you know, automation, taking autonomous systems, taking, you know, these different types of technologies and different types of use cases that we haven't thought about, or that seem like they're so far in the distant future that we would never see them, getting accelerated at a very fast pace is, you know, beyond exciting. You know, on the front end, we might see that from a cargo delivery. You know, every day an airplane comes from Fargo to Williston on FedEx, and then, you know, it jumps into a truck and it you know, has another 100-mile radius that needs to be covered. You know, what if we could have not just one airplane come in here, but you could have multiple around the area, and we could, you know, have a much more efficient way of getting, you know, cargo delivered, you know, across the state. Sounds like good ideas, but they're great ideas, and they're things that actually can happen. So, you know, enabling, and this goes back to, you know, what's Vantis? We're putting in that ground infrastructure to make those things happen. This is almost like having a, you know, I want to be an over-the-road trucker. There's a truck. There's an idea of moving things, but there's no roads. We're building the roads so that we can accomplish all of those, you know, great opportunities down the line.
For me, it's really the untethered potential of this that this movement forward really brings. I think back to when I drove into Williston sight unseen to take the job that I'm in. My wife and I drove in, and what really struck us about Williston when we drove in was all of the infrastructure that's here and all of the potential that Williston has centered around it. I feel that same excitement in the UAS industry. I feel that same excitement because of the infrastructure that's being put in and all of the different potential use case scenarios for it. I was joking around the other day and said, what if I started a business where I took a UAS up into the air and during the winter and flew over Lake Sakakawea and saw and could see through the ice where all the fish are at. We have that technology. What if I could tell everybody where to put their ice fishing shack? I mean, that's a great business right there, right? That seems silly, but the potential.
I think we have investors in the audience right now.
I'm taking commitments later. But that technology is there. We have the potential to use it, and that's just a silly use case, but there's so many use case scenarios. It just, when you sit down and you start thinking about it, it just is very, very exciting.
So I want to say thank you to James, Nick, and Kenley. I was a very poor moderator and didn't leave enough time for questions at the end. However, these gentlemen are here and do ask your questions. I want to say thank you to Williston for being open to this next frontier, which is what this is for us. This is a new space, and North Dakota is actually blazing the trail. So thank you guys for your investment, and thank you for our panelists and their collaborators for making this all possible.